What up, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of the Sound of Violence podcast. We normally talk about MMA podcasts. We normally don't have guests. However, I should start off. I'm Pulver. I'm here with my co-host, Chris Madaffer. Figured if we are going to have a guest, we have to have a podcast with all three Chris's, right? So we have on Chris Rini from Bloody Elbow and also author of The Fine Art of Violence, Volume 1 as well as Volume 2, which is coming out shortly. Super stoked to have you, Chris. How's it going?
Great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hell yeah. So I'm really excited to have you on for the book because I absolutely love the first one. As soon as you started talking about it on Twitter and stuff originally, I was hyped about it. And I picked up that one, and I'm even more excited that you're back to do a volume 2. I guess my first question is, the first book you did, just you and Josh Rosenblatt, correct?
That's right.
And so for this one, you brought on a lot of other people, including, honestly, it's a list of podcasts that you guys have heard us talk about a ton. Everybody from Sean El-Shadi, Schwan Humes, Julie Kedzie, Chuck Mendenhall, Fernanda Pratchis, Eugene S. Robinson, and of course Josh is back for the second volume. And you also brought on some artists as well for this one, right?
That's right.
That's awesome. So what kind of was the idea to bring on more people to collaborate for this second one?
Well, I have this idea that this book is going to be like a cultural event every year. This is something that people look forward to, that they're like, it's almost like, the year is over. Now we can kind of talk about it and look at it and know that say it's a way of saying this is everything that happened. This is everything that mattered.
Right.
And these powerful images and stories that happen. And I like the idea that some of them will be kind of timeless. Like a Valentina Shevchenko is evolving to be a real dominant character in these books. And then there's people like Johnny Walker and Kevin Holland, who coincidentally, who I've done more artistic interpretations of, and Josh Rosenblatt has written about them because I like putting people in art historical context to kind of bring out the story of who they are and the impact they made.
Absolutely. And I think it's one thing a lot of MMA, I feel like, especially a lot of the podcasts we talk about, everything's so current and everything has such quick turnover that, back in the early days, I know I sound like an old dude talking about this shit all the time, but there was months between events and people would mull stuff over and it kind of built these legends. Whereas nowadays, with everything with such quick turnover, a lot of times we don't have that moment in time, or it's very rare that we get a chance to go back and look at a moment in time where a big event occurred. And that's why what's so cool about some of the art that you're doing is some of those images, not only were they iconic at the time, but to kind of have them permanently in a place where it kind of recaps a certain moment in the sport. And I think that's real cool.
Yeah, it's very much about isolating the action in the cage outside of, any sort of drama. A lot of that stuff is integral to the build-up, but sometimes it's very rare. And if it's one of those things, if you do it just a tiny bit, then it matters immensely.
Right. Absolutely.
Wait, I'll give you a good example. Forgive me for interrupting.
No, please.
Because you have the book right there in front of you.
Yeah.
There's the Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker drawing, and that's one where it's taken from the moment the horn sounds at the end of round 1. So it's not like the finishing blow, but it's like Whittaker's in this completely prone position, and Adesanya's got his fist cocked to just put an end to it, and the ref, I only put the top half of the ref in, diving in to catch his arm. Right. You can have fun, but also tell a little bit more of the story of what was happening.
And that's something that always stands out to me is very rarely is it just someone with their hands up, which you see so often in pictures, and that's a lot of the iconic moments in the sport is just a judge raising a hand. And I feel like very rarely is that the kind of thing you're focused on in your art.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No. I was talking to someone recently, and I kind of, when you speak and comes out of your mouth and you finally realize what you've been feeling or thinking, photography has it covered. They did a great job. Photography does a great job of capturing a specific type of moment. In volume 2, Sean El-Shadi writes something about a photograph that you know, that I could never do, you know, without copying a photograph. You know what I mean? It's great. There are different slices of a pie.
Right, absolutely. Let's see, Chris. So I heard you had a couple questions as well, right? Or I should say Madaffer. Sorry, 3 Chris's, so it's gonna get tricky.
Yeah.
So.
CJ, Madaffer, whatever you have,
exactly.
what you want to say. So, Chris, my question to you was whether it's a certain style of expressionism or photorealism or just straight up drawing and illustration. While I'm not too familiar in the realm of other sports artists as yourself, do the names Leroy Neiman and James Fiorentino mean anything to you? And did you have a specific influence to get into not just art, but maybe sports art?
I never saw sports art coming. Never saw it coming. But when I did start this journey, Leroy Neiman was like somebody that came back to me, you know, like, oh, all right. I have to understand who this is. And I have to understand what his career trajectory was. And the best feedback that I got about him was this woman who used to do estate sales. You know, she'd buy up everything after someone had died and, you know, sort through their collections and furniture, whatever it was. And she's like, anytime there's like a wealthy man or like a middle class, you know, somebody who did well for themselves, who has a personal office, personal collection of something, there's always a Leroy Neiman in there. I'm like, oh, great. That's kind of the type of person that is an MMA fan and also a fan of my work. Like a dude who has like a brain and is just like, you know, appreciates multiple things on multiple levels, you know, a little bit of violence, a little bit of artistry. So I was like, all right, good. There's like a precedent for a genre of man, you know, that I'm going to resonate with.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And I like the little anecdote of you saying you go to like an estate sale and no matter what, every time whether it's, you know, a portrait of a famous baseball player, like a Mickey Mantle or whatnot, there's always like that. Oh, there's Leroy Neiman.
Right.
That just kind of shows how much of a pioneer, if you want to call it that, he is, you know, to art in general, not even just specifically, you know, a certain style of art.
Right.
And another question really quickly, are there any former or current mixed martial artists that you've collaborated with or that you found out have a passion for art?
I know that, let's see, I know Matt Danzig is artistically inclined. I talked once to Dennis Bermudez. I think he has an art degree.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then I could be projecting, but maybe Cody McKenzie as well. Oh, and of course, then they're like absolute number one, top of the list, Angela Hill. And I'll tell you this too. She went to the college that I wanted to go to and didn't get in.
Oh, really? The one in New York?
Yeah. She has the fucking brass ring, man. Man. There's a part of me that like, you know, I was always a fan, and then I only learned that because Anik mentioned it on the broadcast.
Right.
And I was like, motherfucker, why are people not like? This is like one of the most elite colleges in the country. It has one of the greatest reputations, and a great story behind it. And you're like not highlighting this. I was so disgusted. So.
Oh man.
I would like to collaborate with her for a future volume, maybe volume 3. That would be lovely. I've already reached out, so we'll see.
I mean, after that bitch fucking season shirt with the Goya painting, right. I think it's inevitable, right?
Yeah, it's so too fun. Too much fun.
I should shout out Andrew Hill's shirt on actually right now, the USADA one. So big cheers.
Excuse me, I have terrible allergies.
Dude, me too. It's been killing me this week. Yeah. That's awesome though. So I gotta ask then, since we're talking about people you want to work with and people you have worked with, Eugene S. Robinson, what's it like to work with Eugene on a project? Because I gotta imagine it's not quite like working with everybody else.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're from the same neighborhood, even though we're slightly different ages, and that was one of the things that, you know, he's a character, man. Yeah. I've been, you know, following him, I don't know, since maybe 2012 or something like that. And how do you put it? Like, I guess once I heard where he was from, I was like, oh, I get it, like, and also it's a little bit, you're like, all right, it's one of my guys. That's good. That's good. I get a lot of where he's coming from. And I definitely, when I made my pitch to him, I made a mistake. I totally put my foot in my mouth because I've listened to him so much talk about the dynamic between John Jones and Daniel Cormier, which, by the way, he wrote an essay about John Jones and Daniel Cormier, kind of comparing them to Cain and Abel. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Incredible. He's just like, I wanted to be like, dude, like blank canvas, go for it. DC, Bones, like, because I've listened to him talk about them. And
of course, Johnny Boney Joni, right?
Yeah, and he was just like, "Yo, man, you're being too vague," and I was like, "Oh God, I'm being so dumb." So then I wrote a more like, tumbling over myself email explanation, and he's like, "All right," and sure enough, you know what? Dude was like, first person done, first essay in the book. Dude was like, "What day you want it? Boom, you get it that day early." He was. That's the thing about Eugene, like. He walks to the beat of his own drum, but he's always on time.
Yeah, we're absolutely huge Eugene fans, and he's a very unique voice in the sport in a way that there's not many people out there like Eugene, especially not in MMA. So I was incredibly hyped to see him and people like Fernanda and everybody on the list this time out. So super excited. I gotta ask, a lot of the people you chose have podcasts. Is that intentional, or do you listen to a lot of their shows, or is it just people you read a lot of their writing, or
a little bit of both? Ever since I don't know if it's since the pandemic or since I went kind of semi full time as an artist. I think I listen to more podcasts than I do read. Which feels shitty.
Hey, you're talking to the right people for that.
No. But the truth is, I get the Times every day, and I get the New Yorker every week, and I like reading long form journalism. So I was like 50 articles on my phone waiting to be read. It's hard. It's hard to fit it all in. Yeah. And there's something about podcasts you can do when you're like taking your kid to school or at the grocery store or like in the studio working, it's just easier to digest. It's compatible with working, so that's part of it. I have, I met Chuck years ago, and, just his writing is like, man, that's somebody I'd like to be associated with. And Sean Al-Shadi, the same thing, although he's kind of established a relationship with Edward Cow. So that was actually part of my pitch to him, to be like, man, let's put you and Ed back together again,
Oh, that's
band
very
back
cool.
together. So I do have a piece along with them, partially because I was already going to do that, like this Poirier hooker, and I'm drawing that shit, There's one specific strike. I was like, I am drawing that. That was my favorite strike of the fight. It's the most innovative, most interesting. I don't know if you remember he's like first round, they're like clinched up, Poirier's against the fence. And he's like, wah, bah, 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 bah. He like hits him with a bunch of the sideways,
right? Just like the rapping knuckle kind of stuff, yeah.
And Hooker's just like, whoa! He just gets out of there.
Yeah.
And then they interviewed him later after the fight. And he's like, oh, you mean the pistol whip? I was like, oh yes. No. So there's a piece called Pistol Whip. That was great.
That's great. I did not know that story. I didn't hear that interview. I guess that's very cool.
Yeah, super.
Awesome. Let's see, Manafort, you had a couple others, right?
Yeah, so I like how you're talking about, other journalists and kind of just doing illustrations for them, kind of along with like written work and articles. As far as, MMA journalism goes, here's a quick question. What are your thoughts on Dana White kind of just dismissing most, media? Because I'm not going to specifically maybe just call it MMA journalism, but he's clearly not really a fan, and he kind of likes to, go to the beat of his own drum. Right. What am I trying to say? What are your thoughts on his thoughts on that? And do you think that affects just the way your work will go forward as far as like when you collaborate with other journalists. Like say, I know you had a fantastic illustration just a couple days ago that I saw on my Twitter feed.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh,
let's just call it a GIMP piece, maybe. Do you think basically Dana White's approach to MMA media and just and just say the way artists express themselves and writers express themselves is just going to kind of limit the way that your work will be kind of reached or kind of interpreted?
Yeah, look, I know that. I know what way the wind is blowing, and I'm like, I'm going to walk my own path no matter what. I'm not the guy to like play ball.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I knew what path I was staking out. The UFC has known who I am since like, I don't know, 2013. Somebody from the UFC approached me, just like, whatever, had a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing ever came of it. And I'm like, man, they know who I am. They've known me for years. And they've shown zero interest forever. And that's okay, I mean, although technically I got paid by them when I worked for Vice. I didn't know it at the time. My checks were cut by Vice. Yeah. And I was like, then Deadspin put out this, expose being like, guess what? The UFC is financing Fightland. And I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, you and Jack were real surprised.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, man. Well, it was before Jack got there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, my time frame is all screwed up.
Oh, that's okay.
Stuff.
Trust me, when your pants get pulled down, you remember the day.
I bet.
Anyway, so look, I got interviewed by The Athletic a couple of years ago, and went back when they had a real MMA staff.
Oh my God, what an era, huh?
And that guy Chad Dundas asked me, he was like, "You feel like you're burning any bridges with this stuff you're doing?" And I was like, you know what? I don't even think I have a bridge to burn.
Right.
And that's it. That's what I'll tell you. You know that you follow John Nash?
Of course.
So he's in his Twitter profile. It says, journalism is printing what someone else does not want printed. Everything else is public relations. And I'm like, you know what? That's a fine words to live by, even if you're going to die by them.
Yep. Well, and go ahead, Chris.
I would say that's just unequivocally true. I mean, right there. So.
Yeah, and that's why I love some of the work that, I mean, a lot of the Bloody Elbow staff is not afraid to speak their mind. Everybody from Kareem doing what I would consider the only real journalism in the sport, or some of the only real journalism in the sport, along with guys like John Nash doing all the financial work. And I mean, Show Money podcast alone is insane that it exists.
Straight up education.
Honestly, I think a lot of us wouldn't know pretty much anything about the antitrust suit without him. So it's very cool that people are doing that kind of work in the sport, because I think that's the work that matters in the long run. Like 20 years from now, nobody's going to remember your piece about like, John Jones said this at the press conference, but everybody's going to remember the time that, for example, like Kareem Zidane did the giant expose on, any of this, Kadyrov, or all the racists in the sport.
Or just like how everybody can say Kadyrov and have an idea of who he is, and it's like, guess what? You know that because of Kareem. I know that because of Kareem Zidane. I think that's in a way it's better to be like, this dude added to the knowledge of the landscape knowledge. You know what I mean? Like the common knowledge of the MMA landscape has been enriched because of Kareem. Well,
and I mean, honestly, a lot of his work, I would argue, probably led to a lot of the sanctions that ended up coming down, because before that, there wasn't nearly as much noise around all that stuff, specifically in regards to sports, especially. So, yeah, it's absolutely awesome to see that kind of work being done. And a lot of your work is, I would say, somewhere along the line of satirical, or like, you definitely are not afraid to step on toes and make some points that will make people uncomfortable, for sure. Have you gotten any personal backlash from like fighters, or I would say more specifically, I would have probably argued managers? I know there's at least probably two that we won't name that I'm sure get all up in everybody's DMs about everything. But
no, nobody. I've definitely gotten some nasty messages or emails,
right?
But for the most part, I'm sure. I'm sure if I was ever alone in a room with somebody, they'd love to,
have some words with you. Yeah,
have some words. But fortunately, on a professional level, either I'm just such a small fish, or It's like, or maybe they're just conscious of like the Barbra Streisand effect of like, I don't know, man, you'd be better off picking your battles. I mean,
yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. So I got to ask then, because one of the people who's the only real person I followed who does like more of the political satire road, of course, Ralph Stedman, who has ties to Hunter S. Thompson. So I got to ask, because I'm a huge fan of both of them. Has Stedman ever played any influence on you, or what do you think of his work in general, and especially with some of his more political stuff?
I'm just a fan of his work. You know, I'm like, oh, that's an OG, you know, this guy who's done his thing. I like really admire him. I don't know that it's hard to call him like an influence or anything, because I feel like there are people who you connect with, like where I would just be like, oh, well, my background is more fine arts.
Right.
So you're going to be like German expressionist woodcuts, Austrian secessionism, Japanese woodblock prints from the 1930s. Like, I'm like, all right, yeah, okay. If you ever see that and call me out, I'll be like, yeah, you're right. I totally love that shit, and I totally do it. You know, that's you know, I know where my influences versus people who I'm fans of. The overlap is blurry, and he's probably closer to the, you know, I admire him more than I am like influenced by him.
Absolutely. Well, then, so you brought it up, so I got to ask, is any of the wood carving stuff coming back? Because they were absolutely gorgeous. I actually, speaking of the A side, I think Casey had one on there.
Yeah. Okay, so this is perfect. Ready? I am in talks with somebody about helping me make the woodblock stuff.
Wow.
I want to change the format though, because I burnt out my arm doing it. That's why I don't do it anymore. I have like whatever like affliction like that tennis players and golfers get. I have like something like that. And
oh man.
At its worst, you know, I would get fatigued just scrambling an egg, you know, that way. So it sucked. It was really bad, and I've never really been able to conquer it. And that's why I do different media now. Mm-hmm. And even, you know, I'll show you, like when I draw, hold on. Man, I have like these things that people with Parkinson's use. That's what they were developed. They're just these, you put your pen inside of this big foam thing. So you're not so tight, you know, your pen's like this, you're more like that. Yeah, I have like different sizes, and
wow.
Yeah, this is how I draw now. You have to take care of yourself. You know, I know that like drawing and being an artist is not as dramatic as being a fighter, but you can ruin your body just sitting down and doing nothing.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Anyway, so listen. So the story is I'm working on having my ink drawings laser engraved into wood blocks so that I can paint them with the original color, you know, wood stain, wood dye, aniline dye, denatured alcohol, all those cool things that I used to do.
Right.
Polyurethane stuff, like I hope to do it again. Yeah, I'm in talks with somebody to run like a little laser shop for me, and I hope to, you know, maybe about a year have that up and running, you know, maybe with the
that sounds fascinating.
That's awesome news. Yeah.
So well, the cool thing is that Esther piece that you saw that Casey showed up, that is a laser engraving.
Oh, wow.
It was just too expensive to get it done, mass produced. I lost so much money. I lost so much money doing that. But yes, I've tried it. It's totally realistic. And now on a technological level, I'm probably better suited for it.
That's awesome news. Well, put me on that list whenever that list starts, because I'm very excited about that.
And I don't mean to just interrupt or cut off short. I actually have to get going, unfortunately, Chris.
Yeah, Dapper has a hard out. Do you have any last questions you want to get in?
Yeah, real quick. I don't know if it's ever been done, but as far as like your style of work, I don't know if you'd think about doing comic book art or a certain style of art, maybe more like a graphic novel. I know George St. Pierre is a mega nerd with like superheroes and whatnot, and he's involved, like he was in Captain America and he was in the new Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. Would you ever consider, whether it's collaborating with a comic book writer, doing maybe some sort of like graphic novel or miniseries kind of highlighting MMA legends, whether it's like Fedor or John Jones, Habib, Jens Pulver, right? Some early pioneers, Kevin Randleman. Not that, I don't know how that would work with the UFC and everything, right? With just their image and their brand, and as far as having a publisher pick that up. But what are your thoughts on that? Since superhero stuff is still the rage, at least in entertainment.
I'm trying to take a longer view, and I would like to have the Fine Art of Violence every 5 years do a compendium where if you didn't buy, I would like to do hardcovers, larger scale hardcovers. I'm not quite there yet in terms of production quantity. Also, my printer is a guy I've known for a little over 20 years. We have a good relationship. I want to keep that one going. So when he's ready, I'm hoping by volume 5, this is it. Ready? You get the exclusive. I'd like to do volume 5 to be a compendium of the previous 4 years, along with the newest one, and start doing career retrospectives. So that's where we're heading. I'd like to do a career retrospective, one fighter at a time. Yes, I want to do almost exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, the compendium sounds rad, and the fact that it'd be hardcover and it would just be a process throughout in years down the road. I think that's awesome, and I look forward to that. If that's the plan going forward, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, that's it. It's just you gotta take your time. You gotta cook those. What they say, you gotta cook the beans.
Yep.
Well,
exactly.
Awesome.
Madaffer, I know you got to run, so thanks for sitting in.
Thank you for awesome questions. This was fantastic. Yeah. You guys are great.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Chris, if you still have a minute, I have like 2 questions left for you.
Yeah, I got time. Perfect. I was prepped for an hour, so we're good to go.
Perfect. All right. Well, Madaffer, good seeing you. And
nice meeting you, Chris. You take care.
Likewise, man. Pleasure meeting you. Have a great day, man.
You too. Thank you.
Awesome. So, Chris, the last couple of questions I had for you, just to wrap some things up, I gotta ask, there's one question that I really wanted to kind of sit down with you on, and that's, what's something you would like to see more of from fellow artists in the MMA industry? Because I feel like a lot of it is this stuff a lot of people would expect. It's a lot of portraits. It's a lot of, like really stylized, honestly, a lot of pictures of people's faces or people with their hands up. What kind of stuff would you like to see more?
I want to see more of the artist themselves, if that's a good way to put it, because me wanting something is like, that's, I could probably pick a person. And tell you like, oh, I'd love to see this out of them.
Right.
But really, when a person has a friend of mine doesn't care about fighting at all, but he has an eye for art, and he's like, oh, well, when I look at your work, it's like, it's all about the body in motion. And I'm like, boom, like people, I'm telling a story about the human body, and I'm just using fighting as my language. Mm-hmm. Fighting is the theme behind my work, but I have an artistic goal. I have an artistic focus that transcends fighting. Fighting is just the language that I'm going to tell my story. And I guess what you're saying is there are people, and this is, I'm not denigrating anyone, and I don't want to misconstrue what you're saying. There are people making pictures of moments in a fight. And I would like to see, and this is what I want to see from every artist, I'm telling a story, and I'm just using fighting to tell that story. And if there's something that people want to convey to the world, like, it's a great theme. It's a great conduit for telling your story. So I guess, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that absolutely puts it the way I mean, honestly, it's kind of a lot what we talk about on our show, whereas a lot of podcasts are just talking about the fight coming up or what just happened on the fight. Right. And anytime anybody is doing kind of something that is just different or that is unique to them, I think it really speaks volumes. And I think that's why a lot of your work stands out, is because it's very much, you can tell you are very much doing art that you want to see. And I feel like that's we started this show because I wanted a podcast that talked about all the MMA podcasts out there, and nobody was doing that. And I was like, well, I guess I have to do it then, because I want it to be out there. So, that's very cool. And then I guess that segues in perfectly to my last question, which is we are actually in the process of reaching out to a bunch of our favorite podcasts and asking them what their favorite MMA podcast is. The only rule is it can't be from the outlet you work at, because we are I'm a giant pain about bias. So I got to ask you, what's like your favorite MMA podcast, or one you wish more people would listen to?
Can I go top 5?
Please.
Co-main event podcast. Luke Thomas live chat.
Yeah.
Eugene S. Robinson.
The Show Stomper, you got to, yeah.
Knuckle Up and the Show Stomper.
Yeah, there you go, old school.
You know? And let me see, then, well, obviously I love listening to people in the industry talk. Mm-hmm. So Fernando Prates, best camp of my life, has really been, scratching that itch. And then I think Heavy Hands, they're hilarious, and you still feel like you're learning.
Yep, absolutely. Honestly, you named the shows that end up consistently in our top 10 every year.
I mean, it's there's, and shout out to like Jack Slack, Dan Tom. Guys are great.
Yep. Also, R.I.P. to the Art Fight Podcast guys. I loved your episodes of that back in the day. If people want to go listen to those,
there was one called MMA Untethered.
Boy, that sounds familiar. I don't remember it off the top of my head. It was
the main people who, when I was listening to it, because they were around before me, was Patrick Wyman, Matt Roth, and oh my God, I'm totally blanking. I feel he ran the MMA Tournament of Bad. I'm gonna look him up right now. So I don't remember. So I don't.
Yeah. Oh man, does MMA podcasting miss Pat Wyman? I mean, to be fair, he's doing incredible work on the History podcast. But
yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. The MMA TOP, but he's they're all tapped out of MMA, and understandably so. I think they were like so deep in it, and it's a very unrewarding.
Yep, and honestly,
if you're as smart as Pat, just go find somebody who appreciates you.
Exactly, MMA never deserved Pat Wyman.
Matt Roth, I know he works in a brewery, and he's
awesome. Oh yeah, that's right. I follow him.
MMA TOB. He's got like a master's in statistics, he's just like PhD in statistics. I don't remember, but basically these guys are like, they don't need to get shit from the MMA community, so I get it.
100%. Well, Chris, thank you very much for coming on with us. I'm very happy to have you on, because I want to promote your work, because I absolutely love it.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to see more of your work. So that's why I want to get the word out there. Everybody can go to chrisrini.com, and you guys can order. I think you still have copies of Volume 2?
Pre-order is available right now.
Perfect. Go pre-order Volume 2, and everybody go show some love. And anything else you want to plug? I know do you have any work coming up?
I'm still pushing chrisrini.com. That's where you get the Fine Art of Violence. And I just want to let you know it's available hard copy, or you can get it right now for $5 as a PDF. 3 artists, 7 writers. I'm also on Twitter at Rini MMA, and on fight night, Saturday nights, I'll be there drawing. I do charcoal on newsprint, just like when I was in art school. That's a lot of fun. That's like really that, whereas the Fine Art of Violence is like high art, and MMA squared is like this like satire. Like it kind of falls right in between. I don't know. I never know.
I love the fight night stuff. I think it's very cool. So
it's honestly, I didn't even know it was going to become such a integral part of my work.
Right.
And how people recognize me. Like, I understand people like one thing or the other thing. I had no idea people were going to like the charcoal stuff as much as they do. That's been such a delight.
Well, and you always capture moments that a lot of times, even during the fight, I'm like, you know what? In retrospect, that does really stand out now that I see it in charcoal. So, absolutely love your work. So, everybody go support Chris and pick up The Fine Art of Violence. Oh my God, I butchered the hell out of that. The Fine Art of Violence, Volume 2. And Chris, thank you very much for your time, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate being here. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Awesome. Have a great day, man.